Week 11 in the CFL kicked off last night with a bit of a bang. No shortage of fireworks in Winnipeg. Farhan, I'm wondering if you thought what I thought when the Ottawa Red Blacks scored that touchdown on the missed field goal. You left too much time on the clock. Not that they had anything to do with it, but the Bombers, there was too much time for them and giving them a chance to make a comeback, and they did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it wasn't just that. Zach Caleros then throws the interception, right? And Ottawa gets the ball. And to me, from where they were, okay, I get why they went where they did in terms of trying to throw the ball on first down. I would have gone and played for overtime right away. But, okay, you got the ball in your hands. You got an opportunity. You know, I wouldn't have maybe taken the shot with a young quarterback. Now, you kind of went half pregnant because they throw the ball in the first play. Winnipeg still has a timeout. They run the ball in the second play. And Winnipeg calls the timeout. So, like, you got to do one or the other, right? If you're going to play for overtime, you got to run on both plays because they've only got one timeout. If you're going to throw, you got to keep throwing and try to get the first down and get the game done at that point. So I thought Bob Dice made a real mistake there. And, then they got the ball back, and there was, 27 seconds left, I think, after that exchange. So, and Winnipeg did just as much with that scramble run by Zach Caleros.
Yeah.
And they keep finding ways to win games. Ottawa generally finds ways to lose games. And, and here we are.
A couple of things. I haven't heard the term half pregnant in years, but it's still funny every time I hear it. And if you were to ask Bob Dice today, do you think you could have called the final 2 minutes better? I hope his answer would be, yeah, I made some coaching mistakes there. I didn't put my team in the best spot to succeed.
You'd be likely to get that potential answer from Bob Dice. You'd never get that answer from Mike O'Shea, who basically told the assembled media after the game that, okay, you need to, maybe you could write things this way in terms of the positive that Winnipeg showed based on its resilience, as opposed to admitting that he made a mistake by going for a 57-yard field goal, right? I mean, that's just huge risk in that situation. I don't know that anybody really liked the call outside of Mike O'Shea, and he didn't get burned by it, and nor did Sergio Castillo, who got another opportunity to get it right at the end of the game.
Yeah, I thought a lot of us would be like, okay, they're going to punt. Sheehan's a pretty good punter. Pin him deep, get him inside the 10,
sure.
Let the defense go do their thing, but they've trotted him out. But I knew, I'm like, when Castillo came out to kick the winner, I think, what are the chances he's going to miss 2 in a row? And I'm like, I don't think he will. So it did work out for the Bombers. They're 5-5. They win with some adversity. It looks like the defense went to sleep in the fourth quarter, and I don't know if you can do that with teams other than the Red Blacks. Tonight, a bit of a head scratcher. It's the battle of the 2-win Toronto Argonauts and the 2-win Edmonton Elks. The Cody Fajardo, Nick Arbuckle show. You probably haven't bet your mortgage and your son's college tuition on this game, I'm thinking.
No, I've picked Edmonton to win just because I don't have a ton of time for Toronto's defense and their cover teams right now. I think that they could be better. Defensively, they're just not there, and they've had a lot of turnover and a lot of change, and they're making more this week. And you get Brandon Dozier, and he all of a sudden gets signed, and literally 72 hours later, he's starting in a football game, which is just amazing that can happen at this stage. But here we are, and I think Fajardo's kind of got it going right now. He's in a bit of a role, and Edmonton's defense is improving, right? I think that's a good group right now. J.C. Sherritt, the last 3 games, has kind of got a few things figured out. And look, I'm not a big Fajardo or Arbuckle guy, but both of them are playing well, and you got to give them credit, right? So who would have thought that if you came into this season and you thought, okay, well, Toronto's going to struggle without Chad Kelly, you would have thought the offense would be the problem, and really it's the defense and special teams.
Yeah, I mean, even last week in that Ottawa game, I mentioned this on the show Monday, and as a Rider fan, we loved Anthony Lanier when he was playing at the top of his game and he was healthy. But then Anthony Lanier was good for 1 or 2 bad penalties every couple of games. And last week, he takes that from away from the play, misconduct foul, throws a guy down, first down Ottawa. They end up scoring, and it's like, there you go, Argo fans. That's the part of Anthony Lanier we don't miss. Toronto can't play like that tonight in Edmonton. They need to give themselves every opportunity, and taking dumb or bad penalties will not help their cause at all. They're not that good.
No, they're not. And, I think everybody is, I don't want to say surprised, but I think they expected what they got last year, where Toronto had a ton of roster turnover. And sure enough, they go out and win a Grey Cup, right? And I think they probably assumed they could do that again, and it just didn't work out for them, right? Whoever they found, whoever they added, it just hasn't been what it was a year ago. And certainly, you're getting a lot out of Coxie and a couple of other people on the offensive side, but defensively, like, this group just isn't close to what it was and what they needed to be, because they could get away with those types of mistakes a year ago. And Chad Kelly was good for a big play, and they'd find a way out of it, or they'd get a sack on the next play, or they'd generate a turnover on the next play. They're just not good enough to do that right now. So you're right. And Edmonton's feeling pretty good about itself. So I like their chances tonight. I've picked them to win.
Are you doing the game tomorrow? Are you part of the broadcast crew tomorrow? Lions, Alouettes, BC Place?
I am. Yeah, no, it should be fun. And we'll see what Montreal looks like. But I find it really difficult to pick for a Montreal team without Davis Alexander in the lineup, right? I mean, I know Caleb Evans is 2-0 as a starter, but if he was that guy, he'd have been starting a lot more games than 2. So I think BC is 0-2 to backup quarterbacks this year. They lost to Jake Mayer and they lost to Chris Streveler. Can it happen again? I'd be surprised, but we'll see. Like, when you go back to that game in Montreal, that BC pulled a rabbit out of a hat, and people are saying, okay, well, BC got lucky because of what happened in the last few minutes. I kind of viewed that game a little differently, because I thought BC was the better team in most statistical categories, and late in the first half especially, BC took a number of penalties that kept Montreal in the game, so that BC needed to pull a rabbit out of the hat at the end of the game, where, I just think physically they were better for big chunks of that game. So we'll see what happens here. Montreal's defense is really, really having to carry a heavy load right now without Davis Alexander playing for Montreal.
It looks like Nathan Rourke is a lot more comfortable these past couple of weeks in the Buck Pierce offense. My concern with BC, the offense, you've got a smart guy and a talented quarterback. So that could happen at any time. It's Mike Benavides in that defense that worries me, because at times they don't look well put together. They give up yards, give up plays, they give up points. What do you see that, like, if there is, a 1A and 1B for Benavides defense, what do they got to correct to start locking things down? Because it can't be a shootout.
Well, I think No, you're right. And look, the first half of the season, or first 5 games that they played, their defense was doing a really good job, right? And then they had the Saskatchewan-Hamilton stretch, the 2 games at BC Place, where it completely fell off the rails. And then, but even in that first Hamilton game, they were good for 57 minutes, fell apart the last 3. Then you've got the last Hamilton game where the third quarter was really bad for them, but the other 3 quarters, I thought they did some really good things. So they're inconsistent. They're not bad. The biggest issue for BC right now is their defensive line is not generating enough pressure with 4. And that's a problem, right? I mean, at some point, you've got to be able to get home. I mean, we see teams do it against BC at times with 3. So they were forced to try to blitz and bring a couple of extra guys into the picture in that game against Hamilton in Hamilton. And I just don't think they can live that way long term. And when you have Matthew Betts and, Sione Tuhema, who are really well-regarded players coming into the year, especially Betts, you got to get home at some point. And then you can't double down by taking a bad penalty every game. And same thing with their interior guys. They've got some good pieces, but they haven't put it together. So if they can find a way to get pressure with 4, it will and I'm not talking every down, right? But you've got to be able to do that legitimately. You've got to have legitimate quarterback pressures 10 to 12 times a game, and you've got to be able to get home 2 to 3 times a game. And right now they're not doing that unless they bring extra people. So when that happens, and you've got some young DBs, you're going to get exposed at times. So it starts up front for BC.
Tomorrow, Mosaic Stadium, the number 1 red zone offense in the CFL, and the Hamilton Ticats are coming to Regina to take on the... This was a bit of an eye-opener when Dave Thomas brought up the stat, the number 7 red zone offense in the Saskatchewan Roughriders. For all of our successes so far this year, I'm like, really? We're 7 in the red zone? That's got to get better for us to... If we have aspirations of a Grey Cup, that's got to get better.
Yeah, and I think their pass defense also needs to get better as well, right? So, like, I'm actually taking Hamilton in this game, and I don't know that I've picked against Saskatchewan all year. I'd have to go back and look at it, but and this is a tough one for me to pick, primarily because I don't know what's going to happen with Stavros Katsantonis and Jamal Peters. If they were healthy, I'd feel stronger about the pick. I love the way both quarterbacks are playing right now. I certainly think Trevor Harris is capable of putting up numbers, but I just think in terms of Saskatchewan's pass defense, there's another level for them to get to. So, I've picked Hamilton, but I'm kind of hedging because I do want to wait to find out more today in terms of what the injuries look like for those two players, because if they're both out, I might flip.
Monson and Mace both come from the Stampeder coaching tree. The over-under for tomorrow's game is 53.5. I'm siding on the over, and it's not necessarily bad defense. Just when the offenses get rolling, they get rolling. Are you on the over as well?
Yeah, I am. I think you're right, because these offenses are playing at an elite level. Both quarterbacks are playing at an elite level, and their receivers are doing great things, and they're showing depth in both their receiver cores, right? Like when you look at, Dante Myers in Saskatchewan, he's having a fantastic season, and they've got some key guys with Emelis, who's missed time this year, and obviously Schaefer Baker, and yet they're finding ways in the receiving core for a new guy to get it done every time. Robustelli, like, pick your guy. So, and the last three games for Hamilton, Kenny Lawler's been quiet, but whether it's Keandre Smith or Tim White or whoever, like, that's another deep receiving group as well, and they're just finding guys. Shamar Bridges in the last game, so they can move the ball and the quarterbacks can find them. So, both guys are having Renaissance campaigns, so I would absolutely take the over.
Farhan Lalji joins us every week for the Cooperators. I believe the Kansas City Chiefs are in Seattle tonight for their preseason game. Say hi to Taylor Swift if you see her in the press room before the game.
Hey, Taylor doesn't do preseason. She only does podcasts in the preseason. 2.5 hours. Can you imagine?
Listen, we'll take her anytime. We need clicks, likes, and listens just like anybody else. You got a podcast as well. Listen, let her know that the Prairie Land Rentals text line is always open. Impersonators welcome too. We'll get back to her. So have a great weekend, Farhan, and have a great call tomorrow.